Good morning, good afternoon, whatever part of the country you might be in and joining us. But Whitney and I were talking prior to this conversation how I think our entire nation is pretty much zoomed out these days. So kudos to those of you that have dialed in and that are participating, because it's pretty exhausting the amount of Zooms that everyone is on these days. So hopefully we'll shed some light on some things and give you a couple takeaways that are helpful through this conversation. And to that point, this is really going to be more of a conversation. We're certainly going to show some content and some data that Whitney and her team has compiled. But Momentum as an organization decided to put on this 3-part series around branching. And we started talking about really drilling down into some different aspects of branching, and whether that's, the brand experience or digital experience or how you market a branch. So we're going to have a third part that will probably be coming in January, and we'll of course notify everyone. But we're excited about this. We've invited Whitney to join us, who I'm going to let introduce herself here in a second. I'm Michael Downs with Momentum. I'm our VP of Client Solutions, and we are a national design build firm. We work with credit unions and financial institutions all over the country. And what we've found in working with people around the country is that this topic of digital transformation certainly is an inevitable one. It comes up pretty much in every conversation. And so one of the groups that we work with very closely and think very highly of is Whitney Lowe with Ignite Sales. So Whitney, why don't you introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll get going.
All right. Hey, everyone. Like Michael said, my name is Whitney Lowe, and I want to thank Momentum for having me join you guys today to talk about this merging of physical and digital, which I think is one of the most important topics out there. But like Michael said, I'm with Ignite Sales. We are based out of Dallas, Texas. And since 1997, we have been serving the financial industry with our digital engagement platform. So really what we're focused on is consumer engagement and delivering creative excellence, high performance, and then also using our digital guides to make sure that you are meeting the member needs on every level. So that's what we've been doing. We work with financial institutions of all sizes across the country. Something that we pride in is that our solution is scalable for any size financial institution, which I think is great for our industry as a whole, because even a small to mid-sized credit union can be as effective in this digital world as a larger credit union. So we're really excited to be here and kind of share with you what we're seeing in the market right now, and a little bit pre-COVID, and I don't want to say post-COVID because we're still in it, but through the pandemic, we're going to share a little bit of what we're seeing and some of the trends that have been happening over the course of 2020. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So again, we're going to make this more conversational, which I hope is a little bit more entertaining than you attending a lecture. So, but just to give you an idea of what we're going to discuss today, we're, as Whitney mentioned, we're going to talk about how the physical branch environment and the digital environment can coexist, and we'll talk about that later in terms of it not being an all or nothing proposition. But Whitney's going to get into some data a little bit later that her team gathered pre-pandemic and what they've seen since, and some pretty fascinating insights in terms of what types of things are going on from a branch engagement standpoint. We'll look at and talk about some potential pitfalls that we've seen some organizations fall into. Maybe we can give you some pointers on avoiding those. And then at the end, we'll take some questions. And on that note, if you can find the chat button in the Zoom meeting there, certainly send those in through the conversation, and we'll hold those and answer them at the end. So just really quickly as a backdrop, why are we even having this conversation? Well, as I mentioned, we work with financial institutions all over the country, and leading up to the pandemic, without question, the topic of digital transformation came up. Now, that's not something Momentum as an organization takes on itself in terms of the actual technology, but we're very much involved in integrating those pieces and helping organizations think about how those will impact either their operations center or a branch environment. And a couple of things quickly stood out to us was the fact that there are a lot of different definitions of what digital transformation means. And so even internally, there seemed to be a lot of confusion with a lot of organization on what do we mean when we're trying to digitally transform. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and it really accelerated this discussion around digital and the importance of it, because there are obviously limitations on being able to physically go into a branch and dealing with PPE and everything else. But really at the heart of it, the same questions persisted, and we're still seeing those questions now. And those things are, how do we serve our members or our customers in ways that they prefer, whether that's in a non-touch environment or digital, and how do we do that in a way that is a memorable experience? If we push technology, how far do we push it? Will that alienate people? Does it dilute our brand? Is it consistent with our brand promise? And are we really meeting customer and member needs? So, and then one of the other big ones is, okay, what is the physical branch's role going to be as we go forward in this new world? So with all that said, we thought it would be a great idea to have Whitney join us in this discussion, because her team and her are very much entrenched in the branch experience from a digital standpoint. And as I mentioned, she's going to go through some data that I think is pretty revealing on what preferences are, both pre and where we're kind of settling in, if we want to call it a norm, but where the water is leveling out, let's say, on what members and customers are looking for. So with that, I'll turn it over to Whitney. She's going to share a couple of slides of data. So if you can just prompt me, Whitney, when it's time for me to go through them.
Sure. Yeah. Before we go to the first slide, I want to define digital transformation. I think you can't go an hour in your day if you work in the financial industry without hearing that term. It has become more and more popular. It's become part of our everyday vocabulary, but I also think it has become very almost diluted in a way that there's just so much out there, and there's so much of the same messaging from a lot of different financial technology companies about digital transformation. But I think we've kind of really lost what the meaning is. And to me, in 3 words, if I was going to sum it up, I would say that digital transformation is a necessary disruption. It is something that we have to do. It is something that is imperative to our industry if we want to continue to remain relevant. As credit union, as the number of credit unions continue to decline, we are fighting to stay relevant. And that's something that we really have to keep in the forefront of our mind when we're looking at our strategies for how we're going to proceed, especially since the pandemic. And I think, if anything, the pandemic revealed some of the cracks in us as an industry, and some of the places that we need to strengthen the way that we interact with our members. But if you wanted to define digital transformation, I would say that simply put, it is a foundational change to the way that you are delivering value to your members. That's it. Sum it up in a nutshell, you're just changing the way that you're delivering value. Now, with that entails about 150 different possibilities and paths that you can go down, but it really is just changing how you're interacting with your members. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to lose the human touch, the human experience, because we shouldn't. I think digital should enhance it, not replace it. But I think it's absolutely a necessary disruption, like I said before, in order for us to continue to stay relevant and build loyalty. So with that being said, I want to take a look at some of the numbers that we saw pre and post pandemic, well, post pandemic and during the pandemic, when things kind of settled down. We came out of the lockdown and people were able to start venturing out some. Now, these numbers are from actual clients, and I'm going to call this client X, and we're going to look at some numbers pre and during the pandemic. So for this client right here, you can see that this was their branch traffic in February of 2020. And just so you know, this is our platform that all of our clients have once they partner with Ignite. This is called our IQ Analytics, and this is a dashboard that you would have access to at all times if you were using our digital guided conversations. But as you can see right here, and this is, in a short time span in February, this is our branch heat map. So this is going to show you the activity that is occurring and when these conversations, these digital conversations are taking place within the financial institution. It'll actually show you the guides that were started. It'll show you what was actually completed, those who took action, and then what was actually converted to products and services. If you actually look at the branch heat map, the darker the green is, the more activity that's going on. So you can see right here that this client X has quite a bit of activity later in the afternoon, quite a bit on Friday, Saturday. There's an hour in there that they're seeing a lot of activity. So this was like I said, pre-pandemic. This branch was seeing quite a few members come in and interact with them. And then Michael, can we go to the next one?
Yep.
Okay. So after February went away and then March came in, and I'm not going to show you every month in between. Basically, the traffic stopped, okay, because their branches were closed down. They weren't able to interact with them, but they were able to interact with them with our online guide. So not only do we have these branch guides, but this client X has an online guide as well. And so our clients and their consumers were shifting to interacting with them in an online environment. But when things started like calming down and people started opening their doors, look at the numbers of like the guides that were started, completed, and the products. They're even higher than the numbers in February. And I know, simply put, that means that the traffic was there, but that's the point. The traffic was there. The second that this branch was able to open back up and start serving its consumers again, the people went. They were there. So I think that's very telling of the pandemic, that even though while they couldn't communicate with them in person due to the branches being shut down, when they had the opportunity, they went back to the branch. So in a nutshell, that shows that consumers still want to interact with you in a physical setting, in a physical environment. And you can see that very clearly here in that June 20 time span after the shutdown was lifted. So if you go on to the next slide, yeah, okay. So this was the online traffic in February. This is for the client X as well, and this is going to show you all of what was going on. This was for a consumer guide, and once again, in the traffic funnel summary, you can see the guides that were actually started, then who was completed, and who took action. So as you can see, those numbers there. And then if you move on to the next April online traffic, you can see that it continued to climb. So here we were in the middle of, the shutdown and things like that. And when they could not get to the physical branch, then the consumers continue to interact with them in the online setting, and that numbers actually continue to grow. So that was how the consumers were interacting with them. And because this client X was able to discover and meet needs in an online setting in a way that offered that, that human touch experience, even though they physically weren't in the branch, they were actually able to gain more members, more products and services, even in the middle of the pandemic. And it's because they were actually able to interact with them in a way that a lot of financial institutions didn't have the capabilities of reaching out to their consumers. So moving on to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite parts of our dashboard. Is this will actually show you your top products and services that your members are utilizing within your credit union. So you'll see these little bubbles over here, and this is showing you what's being offered and what's actually being open. But over here on the right, as you can see, all of these products and services are listed in order of what's basically most popular. So as a credit union, you can actually do a deep dive into what products and services are being recommended and what's being utilized the most. I think that's a great way to see what it is that your members are looking for, what it is that excites them, what it is that they're using. But you can see pre-pandemic in January that their My Choice checking was the most important or the most popular product that this client X was offering to their consumers. I think that's very telling. They were checking accounts, savings accounts were down there, and there were some other products. Now, remember, when we went through the pandemic, what happened? Well, not only did we go into a state of shutdown, people started losing their jobs. People started worrying about the future. People started worrying about their finances even more. So if you'll go to the next slide, Michael, what happened during the pandemic and post-pandemic, their top need now for client X is actually a savings, it's called Save Up Savings Account. So the consumer behavior has shifted from just wanting a checking account and other products to now these consumers are actually saving more money. And I think that's very telling of the pandemic, because if anybody gets in this situation again, if we continue to go through what we're going through, go through another shutdown, people continue to lose their jobs, the consumer is really worried about their future. And so they're starting to save more money. And I think this is a great insight into this client X consumers and what it is that they're looking for. And that, I think that was the last slide, correct, Michael, on there?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a nutshell, yeah, double checking.
Double check.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, what our IQ analytics does, as far from a data perspective, it really is going to give you some really good insight into what is going on with your membership. And I think that's absolutely imperative when you're looking at your digital strategies, right? Because you need to know what it is that your members want, what is going on with them, you know, at the moment of interaction, so that you can adjust and plan accordingly. And so this is where really the big data comes into play for your financial institution.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, this is great info, right? And this is just one, I guess,
this is just
one lens into
yeah.
what we mean when we talk about digital. But I thought this was a way to really take a deeper dive into digital and what consumers are engaging with, both online and in the branch. And
right.
One major point that comes out of this for me, and I think you touched upon this, Whitney, is that people very much, even right after things opened back up, the branch was a critical element in terms of how they wanted to engage with the financial institution.
You're completely right on that too, because and with our banks and credit unions, what we've seen, like with the data, and this is just one financial institution, was that, you know, they did want to go back to the branch. They did want to interact on a personal level, but when they weren't able to, where our banks and credit unions won is where they had that consistency, and we'll talk about that in a second, but they had a consistency in the way that they were delivering their digital, both in the branch and the online setting. So our banks and our credit unions could provide that consistency. When the branches weren't open, they were able to deliver it online. But then when the branches did open, they came back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's shift real quick now into just talking about some of the challenges or pitfalls that we typically see. And, you know, again, from our vantage point at Momentum, I mean, we're more of integrating pieces, all right? We don't develop things like mobile apps or technology infrastructure, core system, you know, those types of things. But what we do see is how all of those things manifest themselves in the experience that the consumer has. in the branch or online. And
Right.
so one of the big things that we see as a pitfall, and we talked about it before, was this idea of it's all or nothing, right? You have to go all in from day one into some sort of digital transformation, or not touch it at all and
Right.
just not go that route at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And we see that there is middle ground, and there is a way to balance it. And it's a huge challenge. It's not an easy undertaking, but that's something that we see can be really a big pitfall. The second one that's a big one for us is, because we work primarily around the physical environment in terms of how do we make the physical environment, how do we design it in a way that really optimizes the consumer's experience. Well, what we're finding is there's a lot of money being spent, a lot of time and thought being invested in the digital transformation piece. And they're, in some cases, knocking it out of the park, right? Doing a really great job online, and there's this incredible mobile app experience. But then what happens, the consumer comes into the branch for services, or just a basic transaction, and it is very inconsistent with what they've experienced online. And it's either jarring, or it's just not a great, memorable experience. So that's another one that I would say we see. And then the last one, I know you probably have a couple too, Whitney, that we see is organizations not investing enough time in training internally frontline staff on how to troubleshoot when people have problems with technology, or maybe they started a transaction online and they come into the branch to try to finish that or get some sort of resolution on it, and the team hasn't been brought up to speed or educated enough on the technology to really make that a smooth experience for the consumer. So those are three. I mean, we could go on and on, but Whitney, I'm sure you have a couple too.
Yeah, some of the pitfalls I think we see. Number one is really just consistency, kind of like what you're talking about. Is you might have this online experience for your customer or for your member, or this physical branch experience, but it might not be online. And I think that's really, really important, is that no matter how your customer member is interacting with you, the process needs to be consistent. They need to know that at any point of interaction that they're going to get the same level of service, the same level of interaction that they would get in any way that they're interacting with you, like I said. And so I think really what it comes down to sometimes, I think, as an industry, we're worried about how are we going to leverage digital without actually diminishing the consumer experience, right? Like, how are we going to make sure that we don't lose that personal touch? And that's why I said earlier that I think that any form of technology, digital technology, needs to enhance the experience and not replace it. And that goes for artificial intelligence, machine learning, decision trees, things like that. Need to actually just take what we're doing and make it better. But with that comes, we have to be asking the right questions. We have to be doing that deep dive into what is going on, with the customer and the member when they are interacting with the credit union. Also, I think one of the pitfalls is, and like I said, I defined what digital transformation was, which was what I said was foundationally changing how you're delivering value. But I think we really need to be focusing more on digital growth, not just digital transformation. And what I mean by digital growth is we're at point A and we're trying to get to point Z, and how are we going to get there? And what I see in some financial institutions is it's not involving all facets of the credit union. And what I mean by that is all departments, your IT, your operations, your sales and service, your executive team, your call centers, your marketing, all of them need to be involved at some degree, at some level, invested in making this digital transformation, or what I call digital growth, part of your culture at your financial institution. And it's something that everybody needs to be bought into as well. And I think sometimes as financial institutions is we're not getting the buy-in from everybody at the financial institution, and so it's making it very difficult to go down that digital growth journey. I think that a lot of financial institutions think it's an all or nothing, and it's not an all or nothing. You have to pick a place to start, and your digital growth is going to be ongoing. It's never going to be over with. As we continue to advance as an industry, and as we continue to advance in technology, we have to continue to be able to adopt and to stay relevant. So don't think of this as, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make this a strategy for 2021 and then that's it. It's not going to work that way. It will be ever evolving. So I think sometimes just stepping back and going, okay, where should I start? And start with a small piece and then work your way to get to that from point A to point Z. And really, point C, you're never going to get to it because it's, like I said, ever evolving. But don't let that discourage you. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means you're constantly evolving.
the elusive point Z.
Right, exactly.
Well, with that, we thought it'd be great to just kind of summarize and leave everyone with some takeaways. We've hit a couple of these more than a few times during the conversation, but just to boil it down and summarize, some things that we feel are the most salient or important points. So, Whitney, if you want to start off, that'd be great.
Well, like I said, so obviously the first point here is digital transformation. It's not an all or nothing, and I think I just went through that. But if you were looking for a place to start, you need to start with your members or your customers. That's where you need to start. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to start asking the right questions, but you also have to start asking the right questions in a digital capacity. And that is one thing that, the financial institutions that are winning at this digital growth game and this digital transformation are the ones that are asking the right questions, and they're the ones that are asking it and capturing that data. So when your member customers interacting with you, you have to be getting all of that information and keeping it and storing it and analyzing it. So what does that mean? Well, if somebody's in a physical branch and your frontline staff are asking some questions here or maybe some questions there, but it's not consistent and it's not the right questions, and one person's asking one thing and the other one's asking another, you're going to have a really hard time getting the whole picture of what's going on with your consumer. So with our digital guides and with some other technology that that's out there, it's important that you're capturing that information so that you know what to offer your members and customers, because you may think you know what they want. You may be like, oh, that's a good piece of technology, oh, that's a good service. And sometimes I think we're throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks, when we really need to be asking them those deep dive questions and then taking that information and transferring it and making it into what it is that the consumer is looking for.
Yeah, that's a great point. So another one, we already touched upon this, right? I mean, the debate that's never going to go away, right? Or is the physical branch going to go away? Is it? I mean, all we keep seeing time after time is that, it's going to exist. It's just going to play a different role. And people, members and customers want to know that they have that. And it used to be, driven more by the convenience factor. I think it's more driven these days around, resolution of issues and higher level of consultation is what people are looking for, but they still want to know that it's there. And so with that, we're saying, to Whitney's point, don't look at things just in terms of one delivery channel. Look at it holistically and how all the different parts and pieces connect as part of that journey that the member or customer go through.
Right.
And then ultimately, whatever that looks like, are you being true to your brand promise? And whether that's in the physical world or in a digital environment.
Right.
And then of course, consistent experience. Nothing's more jarring or irritating, I know, as a consumer to be completely let down when you go into a physical environment after having expectations set in the digital world.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's I think that's, one of the most important things is really as a financial, institution, you're looking to reduce or remove that friction completely. So whether it's online, your call center, and a self-service option in your branch, ITMs, however it is, you need that consistency. But especially I think in the branch, because that member or customer that's in front of you, there is a need. And we need to make sure that we're identifying it. And sometimes I think it's hard to ask the tough questions. And I think sometimes from an employee standpoint, they may not know what questions to ask, or may not know how to phrase them. And so when you take a piece of technology and implement it in a digital capacity to make sure that you're giving the frontline employees a tool to ask those questions, those hard questions. Not only is it making it easier for your team to interact with the member, it's making it easier for the member to get that pertinent information to your team. And so it's reducing that nervousness and that wall that sometimes might be there because maybe the right questions aren't being asked and the member or the customer is not able to give you the answers that you're looking for. So in a physical setting, I think it's really, really important that when you're merging those two to make sure that everybody's on the same page and doing the same thing so that you're not missing out on building that sticky relationship and building that loyalty, which ultimately that's what we're here to do, right? That's what we're here for, is to build loyalty with our customers and our members.
Yeah. Just finally on that is one thing that we are always in conversations with our clients about is flexibility and planning so that you're as nimble as possible. Of course, I don't think very many people expected a global pandemic, but things are going to change, and the more nimble you can make the environment and the technology that supports it, the better you're going to be. So so what do you do about it? Well, it really in a simplified way, just 3 tactical things that we wanted to leave you with is, and I think Whitney referenced this earlier, is get as many stakeholders into the conversation as possible. It really, sheds light on so many different areas and brings people in and they feel more vested. And it just broadens that conversation about how you should tackle some of these transformation issues. And then measurement, which, some of the things that Whitney showed earlier with their technology is, measure, benchmark. What are your expectations and what are the baselines that you're measuring against as you start to do this transformation so that you know what's working, what's not, what needs to be modified. Right. And then the last point really being whoever those partners are, technology partners or anyone else, work with the ones that can help you plan for changes in technology down the road. And I mean, I think one of the ways that we address that from Momentum's perspective is, again, we don't do or build technologies ourselves, but we help clients integrate those into the branch environment. Is we would approach that by coming to the table with different ideas on things about how to plan the physical environment for future technology changes. So Whitney, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think the topic of how you're going to pick your future partners is something that definitely needs to be discussed internally at your institution. I think some of the things that you need to be looking for, and I can confidently say this because I've sat on the other side of the table too, as I like to call it, because I've worked in credit unions where I ran our operations and our sales and service and things like that. And now I'm fortunate to sit on the vendor side. So I see both points of view. And with that, I have seen that, credit unions and banks need to ask the tough questions of their vendors and vice versa too. You want to work with somebody that has experience. Really, you want to work with somebody that has done this before, that can bring value to the table, that can actually show you key metrics and data and numbers like that. There's a lot of different companies out there nowadays, and a lot of them that are playing in the financial technology space, but maybe not all of them have had the success or can show you what it is that they have done. Something that we pride ourselves on is we have measurable data that we gladly share with our clients and also even our prospects. It's something that we pride ourselves in. We're always watching the data. We're always analyzing the data. And even when you partner with us, that doesn't go away. So we continue to watch that, and we continue to talk to our financial institutions, and we tell them, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is where, we think maybe we need to make some changes, or maybe we could improve something here, or X, Y, and Z. But I think it's really important to make sure that they're on the same page as you, but they're really going to be there as a partner, not just, oh, I got you on this piece of technology, see you later. No, you want somebody that's going to be with you every step of the way.
Yeah. Great. Well, with that, let's address a few questions in the time that we have remaining. And I think these are primarily for you, Whitney.
Okay.
Let me,
Sounds good.
yeah, so one question, what should, and I'm going to just kind of ad lib or add to this. I hope this person doesn't mind. What should be your first priority or main focus when thinking about developing a digital strategy?
I think really you're like the first thing I would do is finding your relevancy. And what I mean by that is you can't be everything to everybody, right? But you can be to your existing customers and your existing members, and not just for the new ones. So really what I think the most important thing that you can do right now with the members and the customers that you do have is getting them on the path to financial wellness. Because really, in all honesty, that's what we're here to do, right? Is we're here to help them to get on the path to financial wellness, to understanding what it is that they need in their financial lives and what's going on. So I think that's something that's really, really important, and that really needs to just be your number one priority, because with that will come everything else. When you're talking about implementing new digital strategies and plans and things like that, you're going to know that information by making sure that your members and your customers are taken care of. And I think that is really one of the most important points. But it's a little bit staggering though when you look at it from a digital capacity, because there's a statistic I was reading today that said 84% of financial institutions have not mapped out their digital journey. That's a little bit alarming, especially considering that we're still in a pandemic. That's something that I think needs to be at the forefront of every financial institution when they're looking at their 2021 strategic plan. And 38% of those didn't even find it important. And that's alarming too, because if you go back into another shutdown, if you go back into another situation where you can't get to those members in a physical capacity, how are you going to continue to interact with them? So those are the things that I find important. But really, it's about the financial wellness of your customer and your member, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's another one. In terms of digital, and we see this question a lot. And we certainly try to address this from the physical environment, but as it relates to digital, is there some ideas or that you would suggest around the issue of loyalty and building loyalty with customers and members?
Yeah, definitely.
From a digital perspective.
Definitely. So for the longest time with with banks and credit unions, it's, the term that was always thrown around was, cross-selling and, cross-selling products, cross-selling services and things like that. And that's not always the most popular term. Members and customers don't want to feel like they're being sold a book of goods or sold something that they don't need. So I think that term needs to go away. And I think you need to call it what I like to call deep selling. And basically, really what that is developing an engaging journey. So when you're looking at building loyalty and looking at building what I call that sticky relationship, you have to go through really a multifaceted process. And I think it starts with engaging and guiding your members. Whether it be in the physical or the online, but especially in the physical, you want to be very engaged, when you're in front of your members, but then also gathering and understanding their needs. That is where I think your digital comes into play. And in the forefront is you're actually using a piece of technology that can actually gather that information and store it so that you can use it later on. And then once you're gathering and you're understanding, then you're recommending and you're fulfilling, right? So you're recommending products and services that are 100% accurate because it's based on what the member or the customer has told you. And then after that, once you've fulfilled those needs and things like that, then you're going to take that data and you're going to analyze and you're going to learn from it. And that's where you're going to start going through that big data journey and looking at what is going on and what are we seeing and what are the trends as a financial, institution. And then in the end, that's what's really going to build your satisfaction and your loyalty. And that's what I would like to call our engaging journey.
Great. No, that's great. Well, I think we're about out of time. The last thing if anyone wants to get in touch with Whitney or myself, certainly don't hesitate to do that. We'll, at a minimum, guide you in the right direction if it's something we don't internally have answers for. There's a lot of good information on both our organizations' blogs. We will be publishing this recording out on our website. I think, Whitney, you guys are going to put this out as well.
Yes,
so if you wanted to share that with any of your colleagues who weren't able to make it, they can certainly watch that on replay. And with that, if anyone would like the slides, even though it was just a few, reach out, let us know. We can send those out. But we really appreciate you joining us. We covered a lot in a short amount of time, but thanks for giving us part of your day. And certainly don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions. And we'll see you for part 3 coming up in about a month. Hopefully you can join us.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.